Welcome back, everyone, to NBA not preseason, NBA previews. NBA season tip-off is going to start this coming Tuesday, and we got the Miami Heat to speak of. We got the resident Miami Heat fan, native, whatever you want to say, and Matt Hanifan here. Matt, how we doing? And you ready to talk about your team? You said you were ready to take your medicine, your Damian Lillard medicine. So I'm ready for it. Come on, what's up?
No, I'm doing good, man. I'm doing good. The NBA season's almost here. There's nothing more. I love, like, I don't want to say I love it, but like I very much enjoy preseason basketball. Um, to some extent because it's just like we just get new basketball. The Heat preseason was a little bit up and down, but we're not going to hear talk about the preseason. We're going to talk about the upcoming season, and I'm trying to go on this tangent or whatever to prevent myself from talking about whatever happened over the last 3 months. But no, I'm doing good, man.
Okay. All right.
I tried to come up with something there. I really couldn't. I tried to.
No, you know what? No, it's fine. But let's see. Like dive into Miami's offseason because it seemed like it was besides the Damian Lillard, pretty much the saga that there was kind of just being casting a shadow over like the NBA offseason for a little minute there. Ultimately gets traded to Milwaukee. So I want to see like where your head's at that point and like how do you feel about Miami going into the season and coming off of making a finals appearance as the AC last year?
Well, I mean, yeah, like you can't really talk about what happened to Miami this offseason without. I mean, you can, but like without mentioning what happened last year, because it's like they were 44-38. The regular season was a grind. They played. I don't know if this is a record, but it was certainly the most last year. The most clutch games, which is defined by like if it's a 5-point game within the final 5 minutes of a game, they played 54 of those games last year. And so every game was close and every game was a grind. I think they went like 32-22 or something like that. They lose their first playing game to Atlanta after allowing like, I don't know, 30, 40, 50 offensive rebounds. And then they came 3 minutes away from losing to Chicago in the second playing game. And they make the playoffs. They're the 8th seed. They go up against the Milwaukee Bucks. In the first half, before halftime, Tyler Hero, their third best player, like breaks his hand, and so now their third best player's out. But they were bottom 5 offense. They were bottom 5 shooting team last year from 3-point range. They got good looks. They just couldn't make them, and they just go nuclear against the Bucks. They beat them in 5 games. They cool off a little bit, but the Knicks shooting was bad enough, and Miami's defense was good enough to get that series over in 6. And then where that's also the series where Jimmy like hurt his ankle. It turned into like a softball throughout the playoffs. His performance from that Bucks series where he averaged a gajillion points, dominated Drew Holiday, Giannis, and Chris. His performance after that point just went considerably down after I think it was game 1 against the Knicks. And then they beat Boston in 7, which that got very hairy very quickly.
I will say, I feel like as from like an outside perspective, because Celtics fan, Heat fan here, I think anybody else would probably say that series was fucking awesome. But I'm pretty sure you can agree with me that series fucking sucked. Like just because of personal investment.
Yeah, I mean there were good games, but
Yeah,
I mean at least like game 3 wasn't great from
it's like
like
y'all,
a sport.
you
Like
guys
game
go up
4 wasn't
3-0.
great objectively.
Yeah, like Miami goes up 3-0. We Celtics come back to get 3-3, and then game 7 was game 7. Tatum goes down in the first quarter,
Yeah, well, I mean, like first like 20 seconds, like
Yeah, I should have cut the game off right there when I saw Tatum go down. But
and
that's
Caleb
neither here nor there.
Martin became
Caleb
Michael
McGrady.
Jordan.
Yeah, Caleb Jordan. As a Tracy McGrady because the dude was just knocking down threes. So just my God.
Caleb Martin, my guy who I hold the most stock in. He made me happy during that Celtics series. Still should have thought I still think he earned Eastern Conference Finals MVP, but that's again, it's okay. But then the offseason comes. I mean, well, not the offseason. I mean, they lose in 5 to Denver, which that finals wasn't incredibly entertaining. There was a couple decent games mixed in there, but it just wasn't like Miami just couldn't make a basket for most of that series. Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray were Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray. And I mean, that was that. The offseason comes. Damian Lillard requests a trade to Miami. He doesn't get his wish. That kind of sucked from Miami's perspective. We can sit here and fucking, I mean, excuse my language. We can sit here and say all day whether it was a day that like Joe Cronin didn't want to trade with Miami because of trade requests, like whatever the case. We could argue that all day, but all in all, doesn't get traded to Miami. Miami's kind of left empty-handed because they also went in for Bradley Beal, but not as heavily for Bradley Beal because they wanted Damian Lillard, so they were left without Damian Lillard and Bradley Beal. Whether that's good for them in the end, bad for them in the end, whatever the case is. But right now, wasn't the best offseason on paper for Miami. They did bring back Josh Richardson, who I think that's probably I have a post on the site. Please go check that out, of the 6 best signings this offseason, or at least 6 underrated signings. And I think Josh Richardson on a 2-year minimum to Miami was one of the more, I think it was one of the best deals. I mean, I think they did lose Max Strus and Gabe Vincent in free agency, which made the Damian Lillard and Bradley Beal stuff all the more worse. Although they did lose Max for like 4 for 63, which I don't think to Cleveland, I don't think I would have given him that contract. So Miami was able to get a trade exception and I think like a 2nd round pick or 2 out of it. And then they lost Gabe Vincent, I think 3 for 33 in LA with the Lakers. And I think the rumored offer was like 3 for 24 that Miami gave him. He just got the most money elsewhere, which I think good for him. And I think he deserved that. But that's what made the Damian Lillard and the Bradley Beal stuff, mostly just Dame. It was really just Dame. It made that all the more worse in the end because it's like, oh, Miami's best, I guess, point guard or true point guard on the roster right now is a 37-year-old Kyle Lowry, which he was not good last year. I don't expect him to be much better this year. So it was a tough offseason. They did also add, I'm bouncing back and forth here, but they did add Thomas Bryant as their backup big. They lost Cody Zeller in the offseason, who was not good for most of last season when he signed with Miami. They re-signed Kevin Love. They traded Victor Oladipo away for the Thunder, which created another trade exception. And Oladipo was going to miss most of the season anyways because he tore his patellar tendon in the Bucks series. They drafted Jaime Jaquez, which I remember I was on stream when that happened here, and I was like, that's such a Miami pick. Like, it just such a Miami pick. Like, I wasn't incredibly high on him at 18, but just from like we saw him we saw 1.25 games from him in summer league. He looked really, really good. And then he got hurt, and then he didn't play the rest of summer league. They shut him down. He played 1 preseason game. He played Miami's first preseason game against Charlotte. He was awesome, and then gets hurt, strains his groin in practice. They kind of shut him down. Reports are he's going to be ready for the season. So it's nothing too serious, but there's something they're going to be overly precautious about. But just from the limited sample I saw from him, he looked good. Nikola Jovic played in FIBA over summer, which was fun to watch. He looked pretty good, all things considered, for a Slovenia team that finished, for a Serbia team that finished second to Germany in the FIBA World Cup. So that was fun. I enjoyed watching those games at God knows what time in the morning. But
you're just a fanatic for this, man. You're addicted.
Oh yeah. But it wasn't the best offseason. It just wasn't.
I would say this because the fact that
all things considered, I guess. All things.
Yeah, I would say the fact that you guys didn't get Damian Lillard, obviously that sucks, but also because I don't know the full story because obviously there's so many different factors of that. Like the front office of Portland not wanting to trade with Miami, and then like there was a whole debate like, oh, they should honor Dame's wishes, or like Miami Pat Riley wasn't willing to give up certain pieces to get him. And I mean, I wouldn't blame him because if the guy wants to go to Miami anyway, like try to haggle as best you can.
Why are you going to outbid yourself?
Yeah, exactly. And that's actually like my question, because I know you referenced Caleb Martin before, and there's a couple other points I don't want to speak on this Miami team. But like if you were Pat Riley, if Portland said include Caleb Martin for Damian Lillard, like in whatever package you had, like whatever package was the ideal package you would send him, given the circumstances, would you have traded, or would you have looked to traded Caleb Martin to Portland?
You cut out a little bit again.
I would say okay. What did you hear? Jeez, it's a damn
You were
March.
asking, you were building up the question of if I was willing to trade Caleb Martin.
If you're willing to trade Caleb Martin, like would you include Caleb Martin in whatever draft package for Damian Lillard, given the
Yes.
circumstances?
Yes.
Yes.
The thing with Caleb, it's interesting. I don't think they're going to pay him.
Probably not.
His contract is over. He's on an expiring contract. He's making roughly, I think, $7 million a year. I don't know the exact numbers off the top of my head, but they have his bird rights, but I don't think they're going to pay him. So you want to cash in on that asset when it's possibly at its highest now, than let him walk in the offseason for nothing or flip him at the deadline for something that could be worse. And so I would cash in on that if I were a GM.
Yeah.
I would have. I think like at least a lot of the not a lot of them, but a few of the packages that I heard from people who have sources with inside the organization, Caleb was involved in a couple of those, and I think they were willing to like it. Part of the deals that were being rumored that were out there were like, I don't know if Miami actually made an official offer, but if they were, it would be like their starting offer, and then that's like if Joe Cronin's not willing to negotiate or whatever the case actually is, then like you can't really. It takes two to tango when it comes to a trade.
Yeah.
And again, whether it was like a spike deal or whatever the case was, like, again, it doesn't really matter at this point. But I think like they were in the end, if they had to give up Caleb, I think they would have given up Caleb, and I would have too.
Yeah. I would say just to not have it be, because it's hard. It's not like you can't like dive into Miami without referencing like the whole Damian Lillard trade, because that seemed like that's where it started and ended. But I do think Miami, like, I don't think like for this team, Miami is a good team. I'll say that, because you still have Jimmy Butler, even though he's a year older. Like I feel like
I have a take that you let you finish, but I have a take about them that's going to be a little bit spicy, but.
Okay, but yeah, you still have Jimmy, you got Bam Adebayo, like Bam Adebayo, like I really hope from what I saw in the playoffs, like especially in those finals when like Denver was kind of like having him, like I want you to be the guy to take all the shots. If he can kind of keep taking that leap on the offensive end, because he's a great defender, he loves getting guys involved. He's a point center for you guys, so like he's probably like he's like in that same archetype of like a Sabonis.
I mean, he's better than Sabonis, but
yeah. I was like, but just that archetype, that passing big man, like that guy that pretty much he's just versatile like that. And then like I honestly think the young guys are gonna be the ones taking a little bit of a bigger leap, because like it's gonna be like they kind of have to, like you kind of need those young guys to be able to produce, like Jaquez and Jovic, and then Tyler Hero's gonna be coming back off his broken hand and whatnot. And honestly, like, you can trot out a team or a lineup with your point guard being like Tyler Hero, because you're gonna have Jimmy Butler and Bam being the ones with the ball anyway, so you can still have Lowry off the bench. You can get away with that. So, but I think it's gonna be contingent on the young guys and the other key contributors, because you know where you're gonna get from Jimmy and Bam. But I'm interested to see what the young guys are gonna be able to produce going in for Miami this season.
And to kind of bounce off that, just in Heat circles, there is a lot of discussion about like who's going to start, but like who's going to take those ball handler reps. Is it going to be Kyle, or is it going to be the field? And like just given like a few of the recent injuries that happened over the last week or so, minor injuries, nothing super serious, but it looks like Kyle's going to be starting the season at point guard. But I've been asked plenty of times by just a numerous amount of people about like, am I worried about that? Like, am I worried about him being the only true point guard on the roster? And it's like, to your point, they have plenty of ball handling. Tyler is gotten so much better as a passer and as a playmaker and as a ball handler. Same as Josh Richardson. Same as Jimmy Butler. Jimmy Butler's been the de facto point guard before. Bam Adebayo can bring the ball up the floor. They don't need a guy who is setting everyone up for, I don't know, 8, 9, 10 assists a game. Like, it's awesome. That's nice, but that's not something that they actually like desperately need, or it's something that they can at least get by until February if they want to address that. It's not an incredibly pressing issue, in my opinion. And that's where it's like, I think Kyle's best coming off the bench when everyone's fully healthy. But that's, again, like a little bit of a different discussion. But the take that I have that's going to be a little bit spicy, even just after the offseason that they had, even after losing Strus and Vincent, is I think this team's actually deeper than they were last year. And that's a weird kind of take to have because they lost 2 starters, but they have a more functional front court. Orlando Robinson and Thomas Bryant are better than Dwayne Dedmon and Cody Zeller. Like that's just that I don't think that's much of a discussion, especially since Dedmon specifically cratered their minutes the first 3 months of the season. Or Thomas Bryant, who's younger, he's not as good he's pretty bad defensively, if I'm being completely honest, but he's a guy who can give you more offensive juice than Dedmon did. He's a guy who can give you more offensive juice than Zeller did. So I think they have a more functional front court behind Bam. I'm higher on Hawkes and Jovic than I was on just Jovic last year. Like Jovic was a guy who he was a lot thinner than he was last year and was still a raw prospect coming into his own. Now, from what we've seen this summer and this fall, Jovic, there's still some development to iron out there. But I think there'll be times during the season where he'll have impactful rotation minutes, specifically offensively, as the season goes on. I think Josh Richardson, again, to my previous point, I think if you compare each of them individually, just as players, I think Josh is better than both Gabe and Max. Not to say that Gabe and Max are bad players because they're not, but I just think I think Josh is better than Strus, and I think Josh is better than Vincent. Maybe not both. He's not better than both of them combined. It's not what I'm trying to say. But he can be a functional. He's longer, he's bigger, he's stronger than both Gabe and Max are. And they'll probably still need other guys to step up to kind of supplement that production that they lost, like Duncan. Duncan's going to need to have a much better shooting season. It's been a rough preseason for him. He's shown a little bit more as a ball handler, which is something he's put in each of the last couple of seasons, but his shooting's been a little bit rough. It's been sporadic. He still has ways to go. And then Haywood Highsmith, I think, is going to be a huge piece. I know if the casual basketball fan doesn't really know who Haywood Highsmith is, but I think he's going to be a huge piece.
Be like that high energy guy for sure.
Yeah, he's that high energy. He's 6'7" with a near, I think, 7-foot wingspan. He was a mid-30s three-point shooter last year. He's improved his shot. He shot 9 for 15 from deep in preseason, albeit a 5-game sample. But he's another guy whose his release is much quicker. He's a multi-positional defender. There might be times where he starts, and I'm just more bullish on that aspect of things. When you had questions at the starting for last year, and now you have a Haywood Highsmith who, by the end of the season, just might be the permanent starting for now. Jamal Cain, who is a guy who, again, not many people are familiar with, but he's a guy on a 2-way contract. And he's another player who is he's more high energy than Highsmith is on the offensive glass, on the defensive end. He's a guy who's another 6'7", 6'8" guy who can bounce out the goddamn gym. In terms of I don't know what his vertical is, but it's probably somewhere 40, 45 inches. He can leap. And he's a guy who's also improved his shot. So it's and then they're bringing Kevin Love back. Kevin Love wasn't great in the regular season. He was they picked on him a lot defensively. But I think he's a guy who's not going to shoot 30% from 3 again, like he did in the regular season last year after his thumb injury. He's a guy who was a near 40% 3-point shooter when his previous 3 seasons in Cleveland. He was around 40-ish% as a catch and shoot 3-point shooter, and he was around that mark again before he got hurt. So I think he could, if he's getting minutes, I think he's a guy who could definitely knock down a couple threes a night and a good outlet passer. And I think at this time last year, there wasn't as much depth. Now injuries and all of that stuff changes things, but I think this team, they're deeper last year to some extent. I like the collection of guys they have more. Not to say they're going to make the NBA Finals again or go on that crazy run, but last year's regular season was awful. I think this regular season will be a little bit better should they actually make shots. Because last year, the regular season, they were one of the worst three-point shooting teams in the league. Again, I don't think a lot of that was process. It was just result. But over an 82-game sample, that's a big sample. So something has to give at some point. And part of that was Gabe and Max, if I'm being completely honest. They weren't very incredibly efficient three-point shooters. And they were much better shooters than what they showed last regular season, in my opinion. Or at least I think Max is. But again, that's kind of like my take. I don't know if I'm sounding crazy. I mean, breaking news: a fan talks himself into his team before a season starts. Like, I think I'm a little bit on the rational side there. Again, hopefully Jimmy and Bam have to stay healthy. Obviously, that's not a question. Those guys are healthy in April. I like my chances against any team because I've seen it before, time and time again. So,
yeah, I would at least ask you this just as like a way to kind of like cap it off. Like with the offseason moves, do you see them doing better than being an 8th seed this upcoming NBA season?
Yeah, I think they're. I kind of have them around like 46 wins. 40, 45, 46, 47. Like, I think that's kind of where they're at right now. And so I think I have them as like a 5 or 6 seed. Like, I think that's more than fair. Like, I think the top 3 teams in the East right now are clearly Boston, Milwaukee at the top, whatever order you want to have them in. And then Cleveland, maybe Philadelphia, maybe like that. There's so much. Huh?
That's a big maybe.
Well, it's a big maybe. Just like I don't know how that James Harden situation is going to play out. I don't think it's going to be good, but I do like Nick Nurse a lot, even though he's going to be playing Joel Embiid 47 minutes a night, which I don't know how that's gonna be. I do like the Knicks. Like, I think they're actually like another top 4, top 5 seed again this year.
Yeah, you just listen off like all the potential like postseason, like that final standings is like the Knicks and the rest of those guys. Honestly,
so it's like I kind of see them like in that. I mean, again,
in that mix,
really, it's Boston, Milwaukee, and then everybody else.
Yeah,
but I think they're kind of lumped in there somewhere. Again, should like Jimmy's going to miss 20 games because of his knee and his like that. That's just going to happen. Bam's going to play 65, 70 games. And then you just hope you get enough out of Caleb Martin, Tyler Hero, who I think is going to have a great season. Tyler looks like he's going to be coming for some throats this season, which, again, that's being optimistic more than anything.
Yeah.
But, like, I think there's – and then, again, the other guys that I mentioned with, like, Haywood Highsmith, Josh Richardson, Jaime Jaquez, Duncan Roberts, like guys who can make an impact and make things interesting on any given night. And again, this team just plays close games, and I think they figured it out. I think that helped them a lot last year because, like, especially in the playoffs, because it's like, oh, we've been here before with all these stupid close games in the regular season. And they also had five of their 5 games were clutch games in the preseason. Not that anybody's counting, but
I will say, as like just I guess like my ending thought, my like prediction is that if all goes well and this team stays healthy and the young guys are contributing and whatnot, I can see Miami being like closer to like a 50-win team at the absolute best. Because I've seen them be like they've been the first seed in these last couple of years with the Giannis and with Boston. Obviously, Boston not having a
2 years ago they were the one.
Yeah, so like I don't feel like that's something like super crazy to think about, because if like that's pretty much if they're clicking on all cylinders, and mainly in terms of the health, that's the big thing for me.
Yeah.
Do I think they go on a magical run like they did this past season? Probably not. But I think even for you having like a better team to have a better shot of making the damn finals and actually winning the whole damn thing is a lot better than going on a surprise run to get smoked in 5 games by pretty much the best team in the NBA last year.
Last year was the most fun playoff run I've ever had because no one expected it.
That was a March Madness bullshit, you know.
Yeah. I mean, if you put it that way, honestly. But again, like Dwayne Dedmon cost him like 5 games last year, just like the 10 to 15 minute stints. if Thomas Bryant is a little more functional and keeps him above water, I think they win a couple more. I see them winning a couple more games. Not that that's the only factor, but it's one of the bigger factors.
Okay.
But again, I know Heat fans hate this saying from Spo, because of what's transpired the last couple of seasons in the offseason. But one of the best Spoisms, he's always like, I like our team. Like I like our team. And it's like, I kind of like this team. Like I don't hate this team. I like the collection of guys. Again, if they stay healthy, we've seen what they can do, specifically Jimmy and Bam. It's like they're also another year older, or at least Jimmy's case. He's 34. Like that's a little bit scary in terms of like, all right, how much juice does he have actually left? But again, all he does is he's coming off the best season of his career. Just stay healthy and to get healthy in April. Like if you're healthy in April, once the real dance starts, again, I'm not gonna completely rule my team out in any situation, no matter who they're going up against, even though Boston and Milwaukee both got fairly considerably better with the moves that they made. Especially Boston. I really like your team a lot, by the way.
I kind of suck.
Gonna be sick.
I can't wait. But that's a story for a different day. But with all that being said, it's pretty much, long story short, is to look out for Miami this year. They did get significantly, at least better, despite not having
depth. Got better. Top heavy it's not.
I would say it's at least a step in the right direction. Compared, like either way, it's a good way to build off of. Even if you're not getting Damian Lillard, I don't think all was lost in terms of your off season. But let us know you guys' thoughts and opinions down below. NBA previews are going out before the NBA season starts. You got NBA tip off starting this coming Tuesday. But with all that being said, make sure you check out all of our NBA content and all the rest of our great content on VendettaSportsMedia.com. But to wrap it all up, look out for Miami this year, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your day.